Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by Gerry Hamilton and CJ Vogel. Time for this week's edition of the Recruiting Breakdown. And Gerry, the Recruiting Breakdown is always brought to you by Mark Saunders.
Absolutely is. When it comes to protecting all your stuff, Texas alum Mark Saunders is the guy to do that. He'll protect it all. Texas All-State agent Mark Saunders serves the Austin and Round Rock area and the entire state of Texas. That means he's the only insurance agent you'll need if you live in the great state of Texas. Everything from your home, car, and boat to your motorcycle, RV, and an ATV, if you got one of those too for hunting and fishing seasons. Call Texas All-State agent Mark Saunders' office today, 512-218-8571. With more than 35 years of experience, you'll be in great hands with Texas alum Mark Saunders. Again, the number to call if you're in the Austin or Round Rock area or the entire state of Texas, 512-218-8571.
All right, so Steve Sarkisian and the staff, guys, they're going to wrap up spring practice this weekend. They'll bring in some visitors, but before we get to that, Gerry, you were just talking about good hands. We know Jalen Lott's got speed and athleticism, but apparently those hands are good enough that not only, we know Texas was recruiting him at corner, but we know he can play offense, and maybe Texas likes him a little bit more than they initially thought on offense.
We also know you're good at transitions with this stuff too now.
Right.
But Jalen Lott, yeah, so that's kind of news, right? Because when his recruitment started for Texas, it was corner/athlete. Terry Joseph was the coach in contact. When Terry Joseph left to go to the Saints, Mark Orfe became the coach in contact. Well, now that is shifting. Based on the unofficial visit to Texas after the Texas relays, Jalen Lott sat in the meeting room with Chris Jackson and was very excited about being in the wide receiver meeting room. So there was a thought early in his recruitment that corner long-term was the best position for him, highest upside position for him. But I think Jalen himself wants to, similar to Michael Terry, CJ, wants a shot at wide receiver first. And then if something else ends up being my position, ends up being my best position. And so that is what the transition that Texas is making. They're starting to recruit him as a wide receiver/athlete, not cornerback/athlete. And that includes a conversation with Steve Sarkisian that is scheduled for today, Tuesday, April 22nd.
CJ, when you look at Jalen Lott, you look at the athleticism, you're talking about a guy that it translates. He's a 24 3 3/4 long jumper. That's what he jumped at regionals. It translates to either side of the ball. This guy oozes elite level athleticism.
Yeah, having seen him multiple times in person, you might wonder if the hands are there given his athleticism. The hands are there. I saw him as a freshman at Lovejoy. I saw him as a sophomore at Lovejoy. They used him in that same conversation with a Dalen McCutcheon, a Parker Livingstone, a Kyle Parker, who's now at LSU as well. That was a heavy receiving room, and for him to be the youngster earning snaps on the offensive side of the ball, there was a reason for that. Georgia and Texas were previously the only two teams recruiting him as a true cornerback. On top of that, Ohio State, Oregon, two schools that he saw during his spring break. LSU also in that mix, all were recruiting him on the offensive side of the ball. And to your point, Gerry, there's a little bit more excitement, a little bit more juice when talking about the offensive side of the ball with Jalen. Now, obviously, Texas in that conversation, I think it helps broaden their pitch to him and what gets him excited about the University of Texas.
Gerry, as we go to offense and just look at the receiver numbers as a whole on the offensive side of the ball in this 2026 class, you got Jalen Lott in that mix now. Caden Finley is also a name that seems like we've talked about him for forever as being a potential guy in the 2026 class. Where are things at with Caden Finley right now?
Yeah, I think it's a Texas-Notre Dame battle, and that doesn't mean it's the only two schools in it, but he was on campus with his family on Thursday, Friday. He watched the practice Thursday night, then met with the staff Friday, some as well. And everything we've heard at On Texas Football is that was a tremendous visit for Texas. I think the thing sometimes, and I think this is Jalen Lott and Caden Finley, and this is not just the case for Texas, but a lot of legacy kids. Sometimes they might want to blaze their own path, or they might want to be maybe try to have a different legacy from their father or family member that played at the school. Well, that's one of the things Texas has to kind of navigate through with Caden Finley. I think Notre Dame's really hitting him with, because I think they know that appeals to him on some levels. Hey, you can go blaze your own path and build your own legacy here at Notre Dame. Or, not that it's bad to go to Texas where Jermichael Finley, your dad, was a star. But I think that's sometimes the things you battle with some legacy kids at being the school of the legacy school. But I think Texas is doing a really good job of recruiting Caden Finley. I think last weekend they made a mark and showed themselves well in adapting to the recruitment of Caden Finley. And I think this probably comes down to Notre Dame and Texas. Again, I'm not saying there's not going to be a third or fourth team in the mix there, but it really, I have my bet is this comes down to the Longhorns and the Fighting Irish. And it could ultimately really come down to, does Caden Finley just want to go do his own thing different than what people expect of him, or where his father was a great player? And that's nothing against his dad. They're very close, but it's just some of the things you deal with some of these legacy recruitments. But I think Texas had a really good couple of days with Caden Finley, and they're going to be right there battling it out.
It gives me some Colton Vosick vibes early on. Do you want to go out, blaze your own path? Texas, I'm sure, won't stop recruiting one way or the other.
Right. No doubt. 100%.
All right, guys, let's go on to this weekend. It's another big weekend, like we said, for Sark and the staff. Spring practice is going to end on Saturday with a practice. That's what Sark said. It'll be some more situational type stuff, but it's going to be about as normal of a spring practice as you'll get to wrap things up. Gerry, let's start on the defensive line. What's the theme for you? Kenny Baker's bringing in a pretty good group this weekend. What's the theme for you for this group of defensive linemen coming on campus?
It's reminiscent of when Myron Charles and Josiah Sharma both made their first unofficial visits to Texas in the spring. Look, the difference is you have a number of guys coming in that already have official visits set for Texas, because you have to get the date set to be in the fight now. These kids they're scheduled official visit dates earlier and earlier. But Kendall Gerville out of Fort Myers, one of the very best D linemen in the country. Tico Crittenden out of Lithonia in the Atlanta area. Then you have Vodney Cleveland out of Birmingham Parker. Those guys already have official visits set to Texas, but they've never been on campus before. They will be this weekend, or scheduled to be. We'll see if all those guys get on their flights, right? Those three guys. Then you have Preston Carey from IMG. We'll see if Texas makes a push to get an official visit there. He really likes Texas. He's an over-the-ball player. And then there's Emmanuel Ruffin from Bessemer City. Hello, Bo Jackson, hometown. Does he make it in? Then you have the edge, Trenton Henderson and Kamari Brooks, who Kamari Brooks has an official visit scheduled. Texas is trying to get Trenton Henderson on OV. None of these guys have been to Austin before. So we saw with Dre Quinn, Hayward Howard, CJ, you guys can speak to that too. That last weekend, April 12th, big visit weekend, those guys immediately schedule official visits in June. That's what Texas wants to get out of this weekend, solidify their OVs with some of these big-name defensive linemen, or in the case of a Trenton Henderson, lock up an OV. He's already got a full schedule, so he'll have to shuffle that around like Dre Quinn did. But that's what you're hoping for. And at corner, Camden Hamil and Brody Jennings, the Michigan commit, who was a friend and teammate of Jamie French at Mandarin. All those guys, 10-plus guys, are going to be making their first trips to Texas. How many of those guys does Texas either solidify the OV with or get an OV with? I think Camden Hamil, the corner, who's very talented, I think Texas will get an OV out of him. We'll see on Brody Jennings out of Mandarin. But that's kind of my theme this weekend, guys, and it worked for Texas on the 12th. And now they locked in 2 or 3 more official visits with talented kids. I expect them to do the same this weekend.
CJ, whether it's the group of defensive linemen or the group of corners in 2026, give me a guy or two that's top of mind for you that you'd really like to see. Like kind of like Gerry was saying, you can make a move with either locking in an official visit or at least get some reassurance that you're in the fight with them.
Yeah, I really, really am a big fan of Tico Crittenden. I think this is a guy that's got some juice. That first step, that violence with the hands. Texas has been ramping up its national recruiting on the defensive line. That's one for me that I certainly think Texas is going to be in the mix for. To what extent, I think will be a big part of what we see from this weekend. Going back to this final spring practice visit, practice number 15, to let these guys see a live scrimmage. We heard from Sarkisian early Tuesday morning, said there's going to be a lot of live scrimmages. So far through this spring, that's been a big takeaway, whether it be on the offensive line, whether it be defensive backs, defensive line. These guys want to see their position groups in these practices. And I'm thinking with the way that Texas has revamped this defensive line room already this spring, to go out there and see some opportunity for some immediate playing time, whether it be next year or early on in their careers, I think that's going to be a big selling point come this weekend as well.
Hey, Jeff, I want to go over this real quick too, because this weekend is really Southeast region.
Yeah.
Okay. if you think about the guys we just mentioned, Kendall Gerville, state of Florida, Tico Crittenden's Georgia, Vodney Cleveland and Emmanuel Ruffin are both from Alabama. Preston Carey's a state of New York guy that goes to IMG. All 5 of those D linemen are Southeast region guys right now. Mm-hmm. Then Trenton Henderson, your edge, is Pensacola Catholic. Texas never recruited anybody from Pensacola. And Kamari Brooks is north of Atlanta area in Bogart, Georgia. I mean, then Brody Jennings, the corner of Sandalwood. I mean, there's so many of these guys that are Southeast region guys right now. These are where the real gird up your loins recruiting battles come from. And Texas is attacking this weekend on a lot of those guys to see if they can solidify and make some moves.
Everyone's loins should be girded at all times, yes. Gerry. I don't know. That's just my thing.
Yeah.
But actually, for both of you guys, we've now seen this new look Texas staff. They've had time to really dig into this 2026 class before they get to the evaluation period and get out on the road. Guys, it just seems like, we started to see this staff in that 2025 cycle really kind of get into the Southeast a little bit more. And it seems like the new hires, whether it's Allen Clark or Mark Orfe, Chris Jackson getting another year under his belt, Chad Scott, it just seems like not only are they putting more of an emphasis on it, but they're having more of an impact, getting guys on campus, getting guys' names brought to the table. And again, being in the fight with a lot of guys that 5-10 years ago, Texas wouldn't have had a chance with. I know winning does fix a lot of that, but I love the fact that the staff is not backing off of the inroads they've made in the Southeast.
Well, now you can kind of rail that up the East Coast as well, because Virginia, North Carolina, they're starting to, kind of pick and pull some of the top talent there. Otherwise, that wasn't a big part of it. And I think it kind of stems from the success of dipping into Georgia, dipping into Florida. Obviously, Texas always had some inroads to Louisiana, but now you're able to rail that up a little bit on that East Coast. And Texas, again, being able to be right in the thick of things for Samari Matthews and some of these defensive ends out of North Carolina, that's going to pay off tremendously, especially with how competitive, these areas, these Atlantas, these Georgias, the Tampas and Orlandos of Floridas are in the SEC. Texas spreading its wings, Gerry. I don't have the number on me, but of the official visitors, I see no way that Texas has more in-state official visitors this year than what they have out of state. And I think that's crazy, but it's also the new world of recruiting. And when you're winning at a national level like Texas is, those doors are opened up a little bit wider off of those initial conversations, as we're seeing with all these guys making their first visits to campus this weekend.
Yeah, I was actually just counting up the Texas 43 official visitors. How many are from those Southeast region states? And I'm at 42 because Gaston Grammatica is off the board. But I'm at 21, 22 are from those Southeast region states. So Florida all the way down to Florida. Louisiana all the way down to Florida. We're over 20 official visitors. So half the official visitors are from those states alone. Then you mentioned Virginia with Valden Sone, the defensive lineman from Sweden, the first Virginia official visitor. Luke Waffle from the Hun School in New Jersey, obviously an OV. So we look around, and Texas is recruiting more of those Southeast region guys and getting them on campus for unofficial and official visits. But then we also have some new areas that Texas is even branching out into. And maybe it's from a connection, like in Virginia, because that's the same guy that brought Hero Canoe to the States. But it doesn't matter. Texas is branching out nationally even more. Samari Matthews, Cornelius, North Carolina, Huff High. Texas hasn't recruited anybody from there. So you're seeing Texas branch out even more. But, yes, definitely more out-of-state visitors than in-state visitors. And there's more official visitors from Louisiana to Florida than there are in-state visitors, just in those 5-state area.
Yeah. Gerry, real quick before we move on and wrap this up, one guy that we didn't talk much about, Jalen McCoy out of Tupelo, coming in this weekend. You also got some offensive linemen scheduled to come in. Gerry, anything else, whether it's Jalen McCoy or anybody else, anything else people should be aware of going on this weekend?
And that's a great point on Jalen McCoy from Tupelo, Mississippi. June 13th, official visit. Ole Miss is considered a favorite there. We'll see Alabama, LSU. Is a one-time LSU commitment, backed off of that. I think all those schools are involved, but he's never been on campus either. He was scheduled to be in late March, had to reschedule. Probably better for Texas in around Fan Day, honestly. I think this is going to be a good show for the recruits that are coming in. But Jalen McCoy is a guy that's more of a 5-tech with a frame that's going to grow versus a 3-tech or over-the-ball player. But a guy Texas really likes, again, out of Mississippi. That's another guy that I failed to mention. Good job, Jeff, on that. That's one more first-time visitor to Texas and from that 5-state area.
All right, CJ is going to tell us about 2027 offensive linemen here in just a second. But, Gerry, before he does that, let everybody know one more time about why they need to get connected with Mark Saunders.
Well, because you want to have one guy that protects all your stuff. It's Texas All-State agent Mark Saunders, who serves the Austin and Round Rock area in the entire state of Texas, the only insurance agent you will need. Call Texas All-State agent Mark Saunders' office today at 512-218-8571. For you OTF listeners that haven't yet called Mark Saunders, he's also a Texas alum. Who better to deal with than a Texas alum for all your insurance needs? Again, Mark Saunders, give him a call, Texas All-State agent, 512-218-8571.
All right, CJ, we'll wrap it up with you talking about the 2027 offensive linemen. Kyle Flood had a big group of these guys on campus a few weeks ago and bringing in a few more as spring practice wraps up.
Yeah, the first name I wanted to mention was Jordan Caraway, the 6'5", 320-pound offensive lineman out of Forney, making his first trip down for the spring. He was down here last spring as well. But to return to campus, this is an interesting one. Look, big body. You see the tape, a bit of a road grader. And then I think that there's still some room for him to fill out his frame. You say 320, how much more room do you have to fill out? Look, he's got huge hands. He's got about size 15, 16 shoe. It's a big kid. Of course, March 29th was a big weekend for Kyle Flood in this offensive line, this 2027 offensive line picture. One name from that group that's already going to be making a return is Hudson White Knight, offensive lineman at Dripping Springs. I actually talked to somebody close to that recruitment who said Ohio State's really starting to make some inroads in that recruitment as well. I know it's very early for him. So far, only Nebraska and Arizona State have offered. But look, you got offensive linemen from this neck of the woods. You'd like to see them in burnt orange, right? So we'll see where that recruitment goes. Is he an offer candidate as well? But he's one that I've got circled. And then another guy I wanted to mention, Caden Scott down out of San Antonio Roosevelt. Will he be making a return? I know that, Jeff, we saw him exit his exit from Moncrief from his visit on March 29th. That body looked like a five-star body, right? 290 pounds at the moment, about 6'6". Looked like he can move some big defensive linemen on the opposite side of the ball. We'll see if he makes a return as well.
Yeah, he is going to be one of the top offensive line prospects in the country in that class. I mean, there just aren't many guys who start at that point and then build from there. A guy that got that lean basketball build, so he hides his weight. But, man, he is very, very talented kid.
Caden Scott looking a little bit like Jonathan Scott. If he plays anything like Jonathan Scott, somebody's getting a heck of an offensive tackle prospect. We'll see if it's Texas at the end of the day. All right, stay locked into the channel and stay locked into ontexasfootball.com all week, and we'll have the latest recruiting news, notes, and nuggets there on the site and on the channel if anything pops. If you're not a member over at ontexasfootball.com, get over there right now and sign up. Use the promo code OTFOG. That'll get you 1 year of access on ontexasfootball.com for $49.95. Yes, there's no anti-Gerry promo codes, no Aggie Love promo codes. No, OTFOG is the only one you need to know. That gets you $49.95 for 1 year of access at ontexasfootball.com. Guys, any final words before we sign off for this edition of the Recruiting Breakdown?
Yes, for anybody going to the fan day, do not get in the agility drills. Don't do it. I don't want to. We don't. If you do have a loved one, video it in case you pull your hamstring, so we can play it live on OTF. And same for you, Jeff and CJ. It's not worth it. Don't let's not go down that path of injuring ourselves in fan day.
No, I had a run-in with a wasp during our post-Sark press conference live stream, so that's enough physical activity for me for the weekend. Big thank you to Matthew behind the scenes. Big thank you to the entire On Texas football staff and CJ, Gerry. Thank you guys as always for the time and the knowledge. For Gerry Hamilton and CJ Vogel, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, hook 'em.